Okay, so this one's going to be a little bit about project management, this presentation. Those of you who heard me this morning, you're going to have a little bit tiny repeat of intro. My name is Maeve Dion. I'm at the University of New Hampshire, and I've been teaching synchronous online, hybrid online, joint with face-to-face students, and asynchronous online for years, well before COVID, because that's one of the ways that we integrate students across our campuses into our classes. And so one of the things we have found, or I have found personally as I've been teaching over the years, is utilizing a workbook that helps me stay on track, especially with the real extra individual hands-on things that are needed in the online environment to help encourage engagement. So in addition to your course design and your active learning, there's a lot of daily things. It's not the same as going into a classroom twice a week or going to a lab and a classroom twice a week, and that's your time with the students. There are a lot of things to remember. And if you have a heavy teaching load, for those of us at Manchester College at the UNH, we're a 3-and-3 teaching load typically. So it can be really hectic when all of those have been pivoted to online, especially for those without too much experience in online teaching. And so I use this workbook. And then when I started a new program, we stood up a new master's program that had a lot of remote instructors. And they're wonderful professional instructors who may not be as experienced with the learning management system and or the pedagogy behind some of the ways our program is designed, which impacts the class's interaction with other classes. So they need that situational awareness of the college and of the program and how their class really fits in. So this workbook is not a content workbook. Anyone who teaches any class is a subject matter expert in that field, but this is much more a workbook to help you manage your time and get that situational awareness when you're hopping between classes or your work week is so split up in this fragmented environment. So this presentation, I'm going to very quickly go through why should we use a workbook? What are the benefits? What is it? And I'll show you through some of it, and how to make the most of it. Again, very hectic times. It's really useful. I use it and I've used it for years. We now have it used for every single class in our graduate program. So all of the professors use it who teach in this specific graduate program. And it allows them to have much more situational awareness. They have better agency and access to resources and to an understanding of the program writ large, especially when they are remote faculty all around the US or even globally. Again, it gives you the background for the professional teachers who may not have it, and it helps foster culture. It helps you stay more connected with your group of teachers in your program, especially in this dispersed and remote environment. It helps capture knowledge, and this one's really valuable. You will see when I walk you through parts of the workbook, it helps capture knowledge of that specific teacher as that person is going through the course and has a certain experience and thinks, well, you know what, if I had given an alert 3 days ago to the students, a little heads up, but I was so busy, I didn't. But if I had given that alert 3 days ago, it would have helped them be a little bit more aware of their time management for an assignment coming up. I'm going to make a note of that now, and that will get embedded into the workbook for the next teacher. So we get those types of tips and capturing that knowledge for across all the classes, because we may teach different classes at different times. You may only teach once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year, but you may teach different classes, and there may be other teachers who teach it in between, and we can pool and institutionalize the teacher's knowledge with this workbook. We also use the workbook because we have a collaborative curriculum development process. All of the faculty have access to all of the model courses, which we've built together and designed together. And when we start to see in workbooks certain things bubbling up that might be a repeat issue, it allows us to collaboratively look across the courses that may be affected for those learning objectives for the program, as well as the learning objectives for each course, and get the faculty together who've identified those things and want to work on contributing a design, a redesign for the curriculum to help improve the students' achievement of those learning outcomes. And it also is really good documentation for the academic program review process. And we also really use it for learning management system changes or policy changes. So what is it? Right now for our program, it's a Word document. You have a link in the chat to it. It's navigable with sections, and I'll walk through some of those. And there's that instructor notes section throughout, which is where we capture the knowledge of the teacher who's teaching it in that class. Why? I passed when going the wrong direction. So how make the most of it? Again, it's really valuable across the whole program. Having a program coordinator, for me, for example, that's me for this program, but it could be an administrator rather than a faculty program coordinator if you are lucky enough to have an institution that provides that administrative support. And you debrief with new teachers, or you just get the workbook back via email from the ongoing teachers with the things that they've added, and you collate those and you highlight the quick updates and you make those changes. You actually follow through and be timely in making those changes that are the easier ones, or maybe there's been an LMS change, a learning management system change in the middle of a course, and we need to fix that for the next time it's taught, things like that. But also have the program coordinator responsible for identifying, hey, there's a little red flag here that we might need to connect with this other teacher in this other program and make sure these things are being taught, because maybe it's a failure of a prior prerequisite class to bring that knowledge required, the learning objective required to progress into the next class. So we need to make those connections. Providing access to all of the other courses so everyone gets that situational awareness of how the courses I teach, my classes, fit into the whole curriculum. And be equitable and collaborative in the curriculum design. We have a history in higher ed of teachers owning their classes, which is, good for them, but not necessarily best for the program and the students if they don't actually collaborate and share for the full development across the program and the learning objectives. So you have in these slides the download. I'm going to stop sharing here, and then I'm going to switch to sharing the workbook. And again, this is just a template workbook. So for those of you who are in, I've got to hide my ribbon here because I can't, there we go, hide the video panel and hide this, there we go. So those of you who have it open in Word, it often opens like this. You need to move from home to the view section and then choose navigation pane. And I'm going to move my ribbons over, and there's the navigation pane. And once you've done that, all of this is navigable, which makes life easier for teachers. And you can see here, we've got an update section, program contacts information, technical things, especially important for new teachers relating to the learning management system, and section on the context of this specific class within the program. And here we have some feedback tips. And this is where, especially for asynchronous online learning and professional instructors who are really awesome experts in their field, but they may say, look, you didn't meet the rubric, or you didn't really demonstrate critical thinking. Well, that doesn't tell students much in feedback. You need to really help them more and give more descriptive feedback that helps them learn where in their learning process things went wrong. And so that's the sort of feedback we give. We also give links to Canvas and the learning management system, but we also give links, for example, for pedagogical resources. Here's a section where you can talk about important policies, for example, disability accommodations for student accessibility services, anything important for the citation style of your program. Our department requires that we integrate current events into all of our classes. That's a great place to remind everybody to do this as we're really busy. And then we have a layout. What happens 12 weeks before your term begins? 4, 2, 1, and then your first module. And you'll see in all of these, there's sections for instructor notes. On the left-hand side, there's lots of different instructor notes, places for the current teacher to keep writing things down. And so for the first module, you have a description, you have your learning objectives, and because it's sometimes easier to keep this within this one-page workbook than to have to hop back and forth to the online course and get those learning objectives. And then there's some tasks, and these are those reminders. You have new information on how to grade in the learning management system if you're a new teacher. But this is also where sometimes you have additional tips from other teachers on, oh, wait, this tip was really important in doing this for my program. And you have, I think I can have some of that in instructor tasks. So tip from prior instructors right here, that this certain discussion board may need some extra prompting. And that came because one of the teachers flagged it in the instructor notes, and we added it to the workbook. And then at the very end, we have the close of the e-term with grades, and that's more specifically for newer teachers who are not accustomed to the system of the university and how to report grades. So I will stop sharing now, and you all have the links, and I'm more than happy to take any questions you may have about using this.
So feel free to post questions in the chat. Perfect, there we go.
How do I manage versioning? We have 5 e-terms through the calendar year, and at the end of each e-term, the program coordinator brings in the updates, any updates, and we actually have in our model courses that we keep for every course. So we've got 10 core courses, 9 with workbooks because the 10th is the capstone experience. And the workbooks for those are maintained within that model course. So the program coordinator is able to update the box file with the latest date. So anyone who wants the latest version, that's the one to go with. And that's the program management with the program coordinator doing the managing. And feel free, my contact information is on those slides. If you have any questions, these fast pitches go really, really quickly. Yeah, thanks, Lori. We're really excited about, my dream for years has been collaborative curriculum development. And we've actually had something exciting happen this past spring where we had, one intro level class taught the prior summer by one teacher, and a same intro level class taught in this past spring by a second teacher. And they both identified a similar problem and had different ideas with doing it. And I had taught it the prior year and had identified it as well, but we all had different ideas. So the 3 of us combined together with some somewhat significant change. And one of them recorded a video. Another person changed some of the material references, did a case study. And the third person revised the quiz questions, the knowledge check questions. And we modeled it. We got it done. We modeled it as a beta test this summer when one of those 3 of us taught it. And it really so far has shown different achievement of the learning objective that we had all identified as a problem. So it was a great thing for us to capture, not only for improving the curriculum and the students' achievement of the learning objectives, but also to identify that as something to report in our academic program review when that happens. Mike's got a great comment, science of hacking, art of poetry. I think that also goes to a lot of things. I don't think we can teach motivation, right? We can foster and encourage motivation, and it doesn't matter what discipline you're in. So it's about understanding how our learners learn and the variety of learners that we have that our scholarship of teaching and learning tells us. And it's about sparking their motivation. And I think cybersecurity, I don't know if it's the science of hacking, that's not my specific area. I have a legal background and risk management and critical infrastructure protection background. It's about providing enough varieties and pathways and entries into understanding how cybersecurity affects you professionally to get them curious. So it's understanding where they're coming from as they're addressing cybersecurity and providing the variety of assessment options, assignment types, and materials that are accessible to them. They don't need all the different backgrounds, each one of them, to understand it and get that motivation and curiosity. Love to hear what others think. I'm going to pop in and ask Michael about his thoughts about how motivation can be encouraged.
No, I fully agree with you. It has to be motivation. So at the beginning, to motivate them, you have to give them some challenging problems. I think my colleague, Dr. Liu, gave a talk was about sort of magic programs, which do something which you don't expect them to do. And that sort of challenges the mind. So it's a kind of capture the flag approach where you have to make it a challenging problem. And when you find it, you find the wrong thing, you suddenly understand what you have to do. It's a continuous process where you improve your learning. It's a learning experience. You learn by mistakes. You learn by trying out things and understanding that the approach has to be more general. I think you had a degree in psychology, am I right? Your background was in
No,
psychology.
my background's actually in law and critical infrastructure, but I've studied a lot of pedagogy, and that's all based on philosophy and psychology.
But it is actually, it has to do with the way the mind works. The good hackers, the problem with securing something is that there is no, you have to take into account the fact that whatever you do, you have to protect every single part of every single weakness, if you want, or aspect of your problem, of your resource. And the hacker only needs to find one weakness. And that is a highly asymmetric model. So your design has to be robust and in such a way that it sort of prevents, it takes account of every possible adversarial, brilliant sort of attack. So you cannot say that the adversaries will only do this or will only do that. They will do anything they can.
I think there's a benefit of that. I mean, I think one of the inherent things in cybersecurity and our students is that troubleshooting and problem solving drive. So some of them have some of that initially, and it's prompting that. And for us as teachers to interject the unexpected sometimes. So they may be expecting a certain scenario, but for example, a great exercise, real world cybersecurity exercise I was in, the designers, we interjected the fact that they didn't question their trusted information source. Right. And that comes out later in the exercise. And boy, do they remember something like that, because they had done wonderful work with that information, but it wasn't reliable. And so interjecting those things, we have so many opportunities. Our problems aren't going to go away. Our challenges aren't going to go away. They're just going to be more and more things to solve. And I think connecting that with our variety of learners. Some are motivated by wanting more money on the job. Some are motivated by wanting to be getting accolades as being, I did this, I solved this, see me, I did the right thing. Others are motivated by being in a group and actually collaboratively doing something. That teamwork motivates them. And so for us, designing our assignments to try to motivate all the different types of learners is also a challenge.
It is a challenge. Yes, and it's sort of somehow triggering the unexpected. It is the challenge is to somehow get the student to recognize that there is a fascination in trying to solve a problem which is almost impossible because it was designed because the adversary has so much more power than you have, so much more sort of, the adversary just waits for you to build your wall, and then he finds a weakness in your wall. And he doesn't have to build a wall. He just waits for the structure to break the structure. And so you have to actually sort of understand exactly how the adversary thinks and how the most sort of banal sort of, you assume that, as you just said, that something is trusted, that some behavior is trusted, and it may not be, and that's when everything will go wrong. Yeah, no, it's a fascinating subject.
And thinking about, too, how we want students to think about defense in depth and resilience, not just hardening something against every possible thing. And so how do you get them fascinated about the system involved when we're talking organization as a system, or supply chain as a system, or industry interconnectedness as a system, when you really rely up and down a chain, and to have that motivation keep going beyond a single network. I think that's exciting too.
Because as you just said, essentially, ultimately, the idea of having a firewall has failed. You cannot protect. Things will go wrong. So resilience has to do with the fact that you have some backup, and you you can take that into, you can rebuild or reset up your system in such a way that it can deal with things going wrong. I mean, when I started in cryptography 25 years ago, there was this idea of having a firewall, a kind of sort of fence which would prevent the adversary getting in. Well, that fence doesn't exist anymore. It's impossible. You cannot have a fence. The question is, you have to have a fence behind the fence and another fence behind the fence. So if the first fence is broken, then you have a second defense, and you find you have enough time to rebuild. So that, in that sense, resilience is important.
And one of the things I find fun to throw into some classes, for example, when they do a really great project and they let's say they have a Houston-based oil and gas organization that had a major ransomware attack or something, and they had to talk about how would you prepare in your incident response for that, and then what would you do, and maybe do a tabletop or something like that, and then at the end, in the middle of it, throw in while they're triaging their response per the plan or identifying things to improve in the plan, saying, okay, well, your CEO just had never really looked at this before because you didn't bring your governance into this, and it was really just owned here in your IT team. And the problem is you're not rolling out your human resources, your payroll system for another 2 weeks, and they've already been held hostage for 2 weeks. We have to pay our people. And payroll and HR needs to be number one up next week, not these 7 other systems that you want to rebuild and reset up, which really takes the technical focus on their solutions back a little bit, but brings in that organizational understanding of how the incident response, the resilience, continuity of operations needs to be integrated with the whole system.